the man who helped Moses move into his office, Cecil Bronner. The man who knows about every property issue and every nook and cranny of this diocese, Jim Caputo. When you have any issue with your insurance or compensation or HR benefits, the phone, when you call on the phone and that voice picks up, that competent person there, that is Leslie Thomas. The one who keeps us all on a schedule to help the bishop with her schedule. Our newest attendee to convention, Chloe Caprice. And the man, my right hand, for all of the exhibitions and the registrations and everything that gets you all here for this event, Randy Johnson. And there was another guest at our table. She has disappeared at this moment, but I'm gonna give our communications director. She's over here doing communications. Who knew? Every awesome video that you see on these screens comes through that woman's computer, Nina Nicholson. Over at this table over here, our CFO, he's keeping count of everything we do. He's a wonderful guy. And his daughter is an Olympian rower, Sam Reckford. It was very cool to watch the Olympics and say, there's Molly, there's Molly. So I think I've got all the staff. I want to give a shout out to Cynthia McChesney. Cynthia, if you're watching, feel better. She's got COVID this week. She did a great job getting those regional meetings set up for us. And now to the head table for this evening. And I'm going to try to keep you guys all in order. You didn't sit according to my script, so I'm just going to give it a go. Let's see, we'll start with the president of the convention, the Right Reverend Carly Juanita Hughes. Her husband, David Smedley. Our parliamentarian and vice president of diocesan council, Carol Harrison Arnold. Sitting next to Carol, we have Mr. Tom Savoth, who is accompanying our chancellor, Diane Salmons, this evening. We have the chair of our Rules of Order Committee, and someone I converse with a lot in these few weeks, Allison Gard. And her husband, who I converse with the rest of the year, the president of the Board of Trustees, Mr. John Gard. Sitting next to John is our canon to the ordinary, Canon Andrew Wright. And next to Andrew is our canon for congregational life. Yes. Woo! So many titles. You thought the ecumenical table was bad. Canon Margot Peckham Clark. And making his swan song appearance at our convention, the bishop from the Diocese of Diocese of New Jersey, the Right Reverend William Chip Stokes and his wife, Susan. And Bishop Stokes, if you'd like to come extend some greetings. I did. And Susan, under the applause, and his wife, Susan.
Good evening. 149. Right? 149. That's amazing. Of course, we're having 239 on March 4th. Just saying, friends. Mom says hello. Mom says hello. It is a joy to be here. We are very excited in the Diocese of New Jersey. I hope you all have heard that Reverend Canon Sally French of the Diocese of North Carolina will be the 13th, with consent, God willing, with consent, the 13th bishop of the Diocese of New Jersey. Yay! Yeah, it was amazing. We had a wonderful electing convention. The Spirit was at work, and new things and wonderful things are happening in the Diocese of New Jersey. I am so deeply grateful to have been bishop. It will be 10 years by the time the consecration is scheduled to take place, June 24th. But I especially want to say what a blessing it has been to work with your bishop, Carly Hughes, who just is a blessing to us all and to the wider church. And thanks be to God for this diocese, for its action in electing her bishop. I think more and more we're going to have to find ways in the church. Well, I won't, because I'll be sitting around watching TV. But collaboration is going to be the name of the game. It should always have been. But I think, and especially in the post-COVID world, we're finding more and more that we've got to find those connections and ways of working together. We are better together than we are alone, period. That's at the congregational level. It's at the regional level with whatever you call districts where we have convocations. It's at the diocesan level. We just need to continually find that. And I think we've been doing some of that and did it during COVID. We were doing some things before COVID, but I think we're finding richer ways of doing ministry. I was amused that Scott Russell was included at the ecumenical table from the Diocese of New Jersey, that different body. It is wonderful to see so many friends. Thank you all. God bless you. Have a wonderful convention.
And it may be your swan song, but you always have an open invitation. And one more group of folks. You're all scattered out through the room. I'm not even going to try to figure out what table numbers. Can I have the arrangements committee stand up? These folks are the ultimate in a support system. They come, they give up their weekend to do anything and everything that we put them to, and it is amazing. We could not do it without them. So thank you to the arrangements committee. And I'm going to give one more shout out to my support system, my wife, Pam. Now that I've done all the introductions, I'm going to allow some other introductions to occur. And for that, I will call up both Canon Clark and Canon Wright.
Good evening.
One of the pleasures of this moment is being able to introduce those in our ordination process. And as you heard earlier today, our process has been undergoing revision this last year, AKA rejiggering. And so because of that, the process doesn't have any candidates currently, but I'm pleased to introduce the following postulants in our ordination process. And so as we call your name, I would, if you're on site, present with us, please come forward just to the front of the dais so people can really see you, and remain standing until I've called everyone. So postulants for the diaconate, Ms. Jackie McLeod, St. Mark's Teaneck. Ms. Annie Pike, St. Luke's and St. Mary's, Hope Belvedere. Mr. Gary Yakino, St. James Ridgefield. And our postulant for the priesthood, Sister Monica Clare, Community of St. John Baptist. Yeah, that's great. Just wait for everyone to come up. All right. So welcome our postulants for the diaconate. Thank you for being here.
We're also pleased to acknowledge and introduce members of the clergy who have become canonically resident in this diocese in 2022, and other clergy who have joined us in regular ministry, though not canonically resident yet. So some folks were introduced mid-year, but just to mention that again, the Reverend Melanie Barbarito and the Reverend Jill Williams both arrived in our diocese in 2020 and became canonically resident in 2022. I don't know if Jill's here. And we have one other clergy person who became canonically resident since our mid-year convention, the Reverend Elizabeth Ivel. Yay. From St. Peter's, Morristown. And then a couple of other people to mention. The Reverend Billy Adams is the Associate Rector at St. Elizabeth's in Ridgewood. Unfortunately, he had to leave before dinner, but we want to acknowledge Billy, and we're very delighted that he was here. And he was ordained to the priesthood on November 28th by Bishop Hughes on behalf of the Diocese of Kentucky. And the Reverend Lorraine Harris became priest in charge at Epiphany in Christ Church. Come on up, Lorraine, come on up. On January 1st, 2023. So we may introduce you again next year. So thank you, everyone.
And the third category we'd like to talk about is clergy who have retired in 2022. It's our privilege to acknowledge those clergy who retired from their faithful ministry this last year. Several of these, again, were recognized at our 2022 mid-year convention, just because we knew at that time, so we went ahead and recognized them. But it's worth calling them to mind again. As we call your name, if you are present, please stand so that we may acknowledge you. The Reverend Michael Gerhardt, who served as priest in residence, Christ Church Hackensack, May 2022. The Reverend Mariano Gargiulo, Rector of St. James Ridgefield, retired April 2022. The Reverend Margaret Otterburn, Rector of Messiah Chester, June 2022. The Reverend Canon Robert Greiner, Rector of Christ Church Newton, retired June 2022. The Reverend Melanie Barbarito, Interim Priest in Charge, Calvary Summit, September 2022. And for any of those folks who may be watching us online, please know that you are well regarded and we are blessed by your ministry. And so welcome to all those clergy who have joined our diocese this last year, and blessings to all those who have retired from active ministry in 2022. Thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce to you the Right Reverend Carly Juanita Hughes.
Because it's been so long and because it's who I am, I'm going to do a couple of selfies. I'm going to start with you guys that way. So if you just give a wave. I see you back there. Oops, wait, hold on. There we go. And then I'm coming down the center. Waving, waving, waving. And then this side over here. All right, I'm about 5 weeks behind on Facebook posts, but those will Those will get up eventually. So I've had several people ask me about Stella. And if you follow me on Facebook, you know that I had knee replacement and I named the new knee Stella. And the first 2 to 3 weeks were just horrible. I thought it was the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life. And I think everybody goes through that with joint replacement. Those of you who have had it have told me that is true. And the whole time, what kept me going is knowing that you were praying. And people were sending cards and good wishes, and the prayers just kept coming. And at night, when I couldn't sleep, turns out I'm really allergic to narcotics. So kind of the way you get through the first 3 weeks is some serious drugs that I couldn't take. And I would sit there and I just wanted to weep and weep and weep nonstop, saying, how could you let me have done this? How could you let, and you know, we're in good relationship, you, God and I mean, how could this have happened to me? Can I get this so wrong? And after I would have my fit, this incredible sense of calm would come. And I know people were praying. People were praying. And you have been so kind the whole way. And most people have seen me going down the hall. That thing right there is in my way, but I'm going to go around it just so that you can see for yourself how well Stella is doing. And she is doing so well that she's going to get a sister this summer. I mean, I was just trying to escape pain. But then I thought, after I got Stella and she's so strong and I can do so much with her, I'm like, she needs a sibling. So we have already got that scheduled, and I'll be sending out those prayer requests when the time comes. This is a good spot. I'm going to stay here for a little bit. So let's talk about where we are as church and where we are as the people of God, and what is happening to us and how we are supposed to think about all of these things. Because you'd have to have your eyes shut and your fingers in your ears and be paying absolutely no attention to know that people aren't going to church the way they used to go to church. By the way, they're not going to synagogue the way they used to go to synagogue. By the way, they're not going to mosque the way they used to go to mosque. By the way, they are not joining Scouts, the Rotary Club, bowling, any of the kinds of joining leagues that we used to do. People are not doing that the way they used to do it. And that started decades before pandemic. Decades before pandemic. So when we sit in our parishes on Sunday and we go, when are they coming back? When are they going to get off Zoom? We're going to have to make our peace that some can't come back, number one, because people are still getting COVID. And if you've got issues at all, you cannot come back right now. And some are not coming back because during this time, they discovered something else that gives them the sense of peace. That's what I used to hear from you the most, my first year and a half here, why church was so important to you. Because on Sundays, I receive communion and then I sit in my pew and I feel peace. And at least once a week, I need that sense of peace. And I hope that it will last me all week long until I get there on the next Sunday, and then I can get some more peace. But if I miss, then I'm kind of out of peace. I'm kind of stuck and on my own. People have found another place to get peace. Yoga, hiking, Bagel in the Times. People have found other ways to get peace. So this sense of pressure that we're feeling, how do we get them back? What do we need to do? What's the right program? What's the right preacher? What's the way to get young families to come? How do we make that happen? We need to let that go. We simply need to let that go. God is already doing something in the church. Some things are dying. Some things are dying so something new can come into being. It's a resurrection story that we are in the middle of. You cannot have resurrection if something old or dying does not go away. You cannot have Jesus without resurrection. You cannot have the transformation without resurrection. We cannot get to the new church without resurrection. And everything we need to be that new church, God has already put in our hands. We have been experiencing it over these last 3 years. We have been experiencing it. People keep asking me, well, when are you going to give us the vision? When are you going to fix the churches? It's usually someone very sweet that's saying it to me. They don't push like that. They kind of hold my hand and say, I'm waiting for you to fix our churches. They're very sweet about the whole thing. People keep wanting that from me, and I am looking around us and saying, God's already doing it. We have to open our eyes and see the part that God is doing. 3 things. Christ. Second, collaboration. Third thing, courage. They have been happening for these last 3 years. We have been discovering Jesus in new ways. We thought the only way we could experience Jesus was at communion, where we got that sense of peace. That had to be the only way we could receive Jesus. As a matter of fact, I know there's at least one person at one church who's mad at me because I said Jesus comes in many ways. Communion is one. But you can receive or be in the presence of Jesus in many ways. Jesus is not limited to any one thing. Now, we might want to limit our experience of Jesus, but that does not mean Jesus is limited because we have just tried to define who Jesus is. But we've had an experience of Christ over these 3 years. I want to remind you of some things. I have them written down and my glasses on so that I could actually read them. One of the things that you did, everyone in this room in some way, helped to keep the clergy of the Diocese of Newark alive these 3 years. There are story after story that clergy shared with me and that I know about, where members of congregations said, do not come to the hospital, do not come to our home. We can do this on FaceTime or on Zoom. You can say the prayers, they count still. We do not want you to put your family at risk. We only lost one clergy person to a COVID-related illness in these 3 years. And as I say it, he was 84 years old, and I'm not sure he should have been in a parish. And as his friend says to me, Father Shearer died doing what he wanted to do. You need to make your peace. So I keep trying my best to make my peace with that because I feel like I didn't protect him enough. But you protected the clergy of this diocese. That was one of my first fears when this all happened. That was a selflessness that comes from Jesus. That was a selflessness, an ability to care for them that comes from God, are being transformed at the point where we should hold on to people more tightly You gave them freedom and encouraged them. The number of laity who stepped into new roles. How many people, raise your hand, if you've been leading the daily office, any part of it, morning prayer, noonday prayer, evening prayer, if you keep your hand up, if you go to a parish where a layperson is leading those services, also raise your hand. Was that happening 3 years ago? Not to this level, it wasn't. How many of you are either preaching as a layperson or have lay preachers in your congregation? How many of you have lay people who have been taking the lead with pastoral care in these 3 years? Who've been calling people, visiting people in hospitals, taking communion home to them? Doing those things, that is Jesus in us that makes us care to that ability. And for a person who's never done those things, that takes courage. It takes courage to step into something new. Every time a person preaches every person that preaches for the first time preaches scared. They are convinced that they're going to say it wrong. They're convinced that people aren't going to like it. Doesn't matter if you're lay or ordained, you preach scared until you get more used to preaching. It takes time to get that way. That was courage that was happening. I'm really also aware, and it's rare that I name people because I think everybody is doing something really wonderful in this diocese. But there was a time right there at the beginning where we really didn't know what we were doing at all. Like, how many of you have screens in your churches right now? In an Episcopal church. Screens. I know people who are going to rise up from the grave and come and get us. Because we have screens in our churches. They said it would never happen, that hell would freeze over first, that would not ever happen, but it happened. But in those days, we really and truly did not know what we were doing. And when it came to technology, Bill Allport, it wasn't that he knew everything, but he gathered a group of people to meet every week online and talk about how it was going. And Miguel Hernandez gathered the people who were dealing with food insecurity to talk about how it was going. And Mark Collins gathered the people to talk about schools and how it was going. And suddenly, we weren't trying to figure out technology on our own. We weren't trying to figure out food insecurity on our own. We weren't trying to figure out schools on our own. We were collaborating. We were in it together. We were figuring it out together. And it is less scary together. And you discover things together. It's easier to be creative when you're creative with a group. And I love at one point, I don't know if this is still happening, but at one point when food was so tight, the food banks were not able to get food out to where they needed to get to. But our food pantries would communicate with each other. And one would call one and say, listen, I have no diapers. And they say, we have extra diapers. We also have chicken we don't need. Could you use some chicken with the diapers? And food got where it needed to get across the diocese because we were in collaboration. I want to talk about funding. John Gard talked a little bit about it, about the trustees providing those loans to parishes to get some money into people's hands quickly. I also want to talk about the folks who steward the Marge Christie Fund and the grants for that fund that made the decision that it would be helpful to put money into the hands of parishes so that they could buy the AV equipment that they needed to get. That was courageous. Sometimes we can be very funny about money in the Episcopal Church. We are generous, generous, generous until we think you're spending it the wrong way. or we don't like how you're doing it. Or that money was dedicated to Project X and you just moved it over to Y. And this was definitely one of those situations. And they had the courage to say, we're going to expand the parameters of this grant to help parishes get the equipment that they need to do ministry online. It's got to happen. It's got to happen now. It's got to happen fast. And they made it happen. Can I talk about musicians? How many of you in these 3 years had a musician that was sending music either online to you to learn or a tape for you to learn so that you could join in singing for the rest of the congregation? How many of you had, me keep your hands in the air, how many of us add to that had a musician who created a video of singing that they would put out to everybody? And then how many of you took part in, there was a diocesan-wide video that happened. We had people singing from different congregations. I think that was for Easter one year. Again, collaboration, working with each other, doing things that we had not done before. It takes courage to step into things. I think the place where we've seen our courage the most certainly, is around the troubles that we have experienced with racism, with white supremacy, with gun violence, with police brutality, and with anti-Semitism. These kind of growing concerns, there's so many that you can get to a place where you think, what difference can I make? What difference can my parish make? It's happening so much, I don't have enough energy to keep carrying, that we have compassion fatigue, that we're tired. This has gone on a very long time. Enough is enough. I tried. I did my book study. I took Sacred Ground, and it's still happening. I have my orange ribbon or my orange stole, and it's still happening. I make sure that I touch base with the local synagogue and that the rabbi there knows that they have my support, and it's still happening. And it takes courage to stand in the midst of it still happening and ask ourselves and ask God, and what will you have me do now? What will you have me do next? To continue to show up. Because for the people that these things are happening to, they don't get to take a day off. I can't take a day off from my Black skin. Every single day of the week, it is still right there. Our Jewish siblings can't take a day off from being Jewish. Our LGBTQ siblings, especially trans folks who seem to have been selected for a special brand of violence, and let they be Black and trans, it's as if a group has decided to hone in on them. They don't get to take a day off. And until they get to the place where they can take a day off, we don't get a day off. We keep on going. I say all this not to say how wonderful we are. There are things that are wonderful. You know, this is like the best spot. I wish you could all come and stand here with me for a little bit, because I can see you all and I love you so much. And to see your faces and to know what God is doing in you and with you and through you, it is a gift to be here standing with you. I think you're wonderful, but it doesn't mean we get everything right. And it doesn't mean there's not work for us to do. So I say all these things, I remind us of all these things, not just because I think you're so wonderful, but because I am convinced God is already changing us and changing the church. It is already happening. Recognize this, friends. Jesus has been walking with us. We have gone from being a church who looked to church as a place to receive our peace only. And the thing that people say to me so often now is, when I leave church, I feel ready to face what is out there. I feel strong, I feel confident, I feel ready to face what is out there. That is a very different thing than coming to church for peace. Listen, so for the person who's going, my life is hell and she just took my peace away. I'm not trying to take your peace away. I want you to have that sense of peace. But there is a greater sense of peace when we are confident that Christ is changing the world around us by moving through us. That's a kind of peace that is priceless. We already have that. You already have been collaborating with each other. It is just like Chip Stokes just said, it is the future, not just for the church, but for everybody. We will have to be in collaboration with each other. Go back to those geese again that we were talking about. Figure out your spot in the V formation. And remember that we are always lifting each other up. We're always getting that little bit of assist from the velocity and the speed of the person in front of us, along with us. And somebody is going to be the lead goose for a while, but they're going to get tired, and then someone else will move into that position. That's what happens when we collaborate. I'm going to say something. I'm going to ready to go Baptist on you, and I've never been Baptist in my life, ever. I pride myself on that. Well, think of the country I was born in. Now I was proud of being an Episcopalian in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm going to say something, I'm going to ask you to repeat it. And then I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to ask you to repeat it. And I'm going to say it again, and then I'm going to ask you to repeat it like you really mean it with all your heart and soul. You ready? I am courageous.
I am courageous.
I am courageous.
I am
I am courageous.
courageous. I am courageous.
Grab a hold of that, because we are living in a world that is dangerous right now for so many groups of people, and there is no room for us to be compassionately fatigued. When that comes up, the response to my fatigue is, I am courageous. And that God is giving us what we need in order to do the work in front of us. That there cannot be this sit around in silence. There cannot be waiting for the next book study. If you haven't taken Sacred Ground, you need to. But we can't keep falling back. We must press forward. We must press forward. It's what courageous people do. They keep moving forward. I have you say, I am courageous, because when I think of you, when I describe you, I said, somebody just asked me, they're interviewing for a position here in the diocese, and they asked me, how's the Diocese of Newark? And I said, well, they're coming from the South. It's not the South, it's the Northeast. There is no social capital in going to church here. You don't go to church because you're trying to grow your business in Northern New Jersey. If you're going to church, it's because you want to be in church. And I said, these are people that recognize there's a level of anxiety and depression and fear and danger around us, and they are doing something about it. And if that draws you, maybe you belong in the Diocese of Newark. But we're not going to sit around and be polite about it, because we have work to do. So when I have you say I'm courageous, I'm not being cute. I hate it when people tell me I've done something that's cute, because I'm not a cute girl. I never have been, not in my entire life. I don't do cute. I do direct. That's what I do. I'm telling you to say I'm courageous because it's how I describe you. There is quite a lot before us. I'll talk more tomorrow about how we get there specifically. But the thing that I want you to walk away with tonight, after the 3 years that we have just been through, that you have come to know Jesus in new ways, being with each other, being in the prayer closet in your house, leading prayers, praying for somebody else, being prayed for by somebody else, sitting with scripture. You have found Jesus in new ways that you had not experienced Christ before. Christ is not leaving us right now. You have been collaborating all through these 3 years. Churches that have been in competition with each other for decades have been working together, and we're going to be doing more of that, and working with faith organizations that are around us. You have already been collaborating. And you are courageous. Does anybody have anything to say to me? Amen. That's not what I was looking for. Amen.